All right, here we go, everybody, on this Tuesday. Yes, my goodness, we are like it couldn't be more winter than it is right now. And ice is certainly in the news and in the news in the city of Providence. Very disappointing. But I understand the why with Mayor Smiley. We want to give him the benefit of the doubt. Is because he has the primary against David Morales. But hi there, Jessica Perry. Folks, we're going to be starting in just a couple moments. We also have a special guest we're going to introduce you to. He would like to represent you in Congress instead of Seth Magaziner. So we're going to interview and have a special discussion. Let me see that. Let's see. Why would that? Let me just double check. I'm not sure why. Let's see. Why would that? Let me just double check. I'm not sure why. Audio is fine on all of our platforms. The audio is totally fine on all of our platforms, but I'll double check. Nothing throws us off more than I have no audio. But we'll double check it. And hopefully Pete's going to let us know when he's all set because we don't have a problem with it. Let us know when he's all set. Yeah, the YouTube audio is totally fine. So there's Debbie. Not exactly sure what the problem is with that. Let me just do that. Okay, we're going to start in just 3 minutes. Not sure what that was all about. Hi, one and all. Yes, I don't get it. But we shall see. I'm not sure why that would be. Okay. And we have some body cam footage up. Yes. Everybody else says fine. I don't understand. But we do run into that sometimes. Better to find out in advance. And okay. You have we've even upgraded our audio, as a matter of fact. Not sure what to make of that. But we shall see. There's Henry B. Yes, folks, the 1-year anniversary. That's exactly right. President Trump took office. What a year it has been already. Oh, so now we're all set. Okay. That is very good to know. All right. We're going to start in just 1 minute. No. I mean, X is fine. YouTube is fine. Facebook is fine. And what's going on, obviously, we have some good Warwick police body cam footage that is up. We're still upgrading. Boy, this weather is just brutal. Yes, everybody stay warm. Exactly right. And we're going to begin at 106. Folks, good afternoon. Yes, right now at 106 on this 1-year anniversary. It was 1 year ago today that President Trump took office. this portion of our program, and it's brought to you by the Coesit Inn, 226 Coesit Avenue, West Warwick, sponsors of DePietro.com. We're going to have, we'll have the link up later, but it is on all of our platforms of the work police. I included the foot chase. It does start off, to be honest with you, with showing the Warwick police officers pursuing the vehicle. This was the high-speed chase that turned into a foot pursuit last Thursday. But we do have it up on TikTok. We have it up on our Facebook page. We have it up on YouTube, and we also have it up on Instagram. But we will have it up in a link to it on the website, depetro.com, a little bit later today. This portion of the program is brought to you by the Coesit Inn, 226 Coesit Avenue, West Warwick. Remember what they say, lunch, dinner, or drinks in the lounge, and they're waiting for you at the Coesit Inn. Now, also, I want to remind people, because of Rhode Island, because of being in the Northeast, because Governor McKee doesn't have a real energy policy, energy can be expensive, obviously, in this part of the country. And that's why I want to remind you, if you use propane, take advantage. Call Propane Plus today, 401-885-4209. In Massachusetts, 508-252-3359 for Propane Plus, and they're always online at propaneplus.com. Now, as I said, we're going to speak with Vic Miller, coming up a little bit later. And a couple stories I want to mention. I want to start off. I will get to Mayor Smiley, and he just had a press briefing, and I think it's disappointing because the mayor is reacting to pressure he's receiving from his socialist Democrat opponent, David Morales. But I did post this on Facebook and Instagram. Wallet Hub has now come out about best states to start a business, worst states to start a business. If you were to take a guess, where do you think Rhode Island might fall in the category of 50 states with best place to start a business and worst state to start a business? If you would guess top 10, you'd be wrong, actually. No. 50. 50. Not only is the state dead last, obviously in New England, it's dead last in the entire country. And I want you to think about this. The category, worst states to start a business. Excuse me. Let's talk about some obvious ones that you would think Rhode Island, at the very least, could beat, such as Alaska and Hawaii, for the simple fact that it's not easy and it's expensive to get things to those two particular places. That is not accurate. Alaska is ranked 43rd. Hawaii is ranked 48th. Wallet Hub, 2026, worst state to start a business. Dead last, the state of Rhode Island. Now, folks, I want to be very clear. It shouldn't be that way. And I'll tell you what's missing. It's a ho-hum, not only really from general mainstream media. When something like that comes out, one would think you'd have emergency press conference. Governor McKee, the Speaker, the Senate President. This is unacceptable. And as a result of that, we're taking the following actions immediately, implementing it right now. Zero. Silence. And if you dive inside the Wallet Hub part of it, what they talk about the ranking, business environment is ranked 50th. Now, it all ties in, hand in hand. It all ties in with the Governor McKee completely forfeits and gives the state up to the special interests, the public sector unions. And as a result of that, does that make any sense? I would think it should be that the state's ranked number one And then, but it's like with an asterisk, where the rest of the states are saying, well, that's not fair. I mean, they're the smallest state. Of course, it's the easiest place to start a business because they're the smallest state and everything can be condensed. It is so unacceptable. Think of the different, whether it's venture capitals funds or startups or just anyone that wants to start a business. The states, by the way, I did post this, but no surprise. Think of this: the number one state, the best state to start a business is Florida. And what is so ironic about that is when you think about it, they're in such demand. They don't have to be ranked number one. They could say they could play, the role of the pretty girl at the dance, where, it's difficult. It's kind of a difficult place to start a business, but the weather's great and blah blah blah. No, they're not. Number one is Florida. Number two is Utah. Number three is Texas. Four, Oklahoma. Gee, what do these states have in common? Five is Idaho. Seven is Georgia. Eight is Indiana. 10 is Nevada. Nine is Nevada. How about California's number 10? No, dead last. And it shouldn't be that way. There are certain things, let me be very clear. That's fixable. That's fixable. I'm very anxious to hear someone like whoever's running for governor. How are you going to address that? Can you imagine just don't be in the bottom half? There's 50 states. So if you're 1 through 25, at least you're in there are certain things you can't do. The state's, not going to get bigger. The state is not going to be suddenly near the weather climate is not going to, there are certain things you can't change. That's something you can change. That could be changed. And let's just be very clear about this. That could be changed today through executive order. If the governor said, I'm calling a meeting this afternoon with the speaker and the Senate president, and by the end of the day, we're going to put through executive action and then legislative action to change that. Because we're tired of being last on the list. It's what does that tell you? Worst place to, again, it's all preventable. There are things, and that's what I don't think is pointed out enough. There are certain things you can control, certain things you can't control. For instance, you can control whether or not you march and protest walking into a church as people are having a church service. That's preventable. That should not be allowed. Those people absolutely should be arrested. They should face federal charges, starting with Don Lemon and the rest of those nutcases. Notice total silence from the Democrat leaders in the state. Total silence. Wouldn't it be refreshing if when you have protesters march into a church, start screaming at the individuals and stop the church service? They weren't even following them to their cars. Wouldn't it be refreshing to have an elected official step forward and say that type of behavior is wrong? Zero. Totally silent. Now, folks, I also want to remind you about, because someone did ask me, if you have a fire in your business. If you have a fire, you have an emergency. Serve Pro of Providence. Call them today, whether it's fire damage. If you have a fire, you're going to have fire damage. And then you're also going to have smoke damage. And then you're going to have water damage because they have to put out the fire. Serve Pro of Providence. Call them today, 401 941 5500. 401 941 5500. Fast, thorough, professional. When disaster strikes, you can depend on Serve Pro of Providence. 401 941 5500. Now, I want to go to, there was a big press briefing, and Mayor Smiley, the mayor of Providence, has issued anti-ICE executive order. This is pandering. This is completely unnecessary. There's so many things wrong with this. It should be challenged. I don't think it's legal. I don't think it's constitutional. But then again, Providence is filled with that. Providence City Council is going to introduce rent control. That will be challenged. That will be legally challenged. And it may not end up going anywhere. New order from Mayor Smiley puts restrictions on ICE in Providence. Why would you do that? They're trying to get people that have committed crimes. And ICE is being brought in to track them down, charge them, hold them accountable, and then ideally deport them. Why would you make that harder for them? In his first executive order of the year, this is Channel 12, Mayor Brett Smiley has unveiled an executive order aimed at making it more difficult for federal immigration authorities to conduct enforcement operations in Providence. Why would you do that? As I've talked about, let's trade that out. Mayor Smiley is going to make it more difficult for the state police to conduct enforcement operations in Providence. Mayor Smiley has introduced through executive order, it's going to make it more difficult for the FBI to conduct enforcement operations in Providence. How about the IRS, federal marshals, ATF? No, he's doing it on the 1-year anniversary of President Trump taking office. This comes just months after Mayor Smiley signed an executive order reaffirming Providence police are not allowed to assist federal immigration authorities. Well, we saw how that turned out. We saw how that turned out in Minneapolis. You know what's interesting about that? You would think, based on what you saw happen in Minneapolis, that it would actually be the opposite. So now anyone that is going after a lot of these individuals, right? The people that want to go after, keep in mind, ICE is going after rapists. ICE is going after child molesters, murderers, killers. That's who they're going after. Why would you want to make it more difficult? Does that make sense to any reasonable individual? Instead, the mayor said the federal actions that we're seeing across the nation are threatening immigrant communities, causing fear and uncertainty for all of our neighbors. They love that word. There's two words I can't stand: community and neighbors. Providence's strength comes from our diverse immigrant communities. We do everything possible, protect them, maintain trust. So you have an MS-13 gang member operating in a neighborhood, let's say Washington Park or Oneyville. So you have an MS-13 gang member, and they're raping girls in the neighborhood and pumping out fentanyl. And ICE wants to go in and remove that individual. And what you're saying is, no, we're not gonna assist them. We're not going to allow them. We want that person to stay. As a matter of fact, we're upset that that gang member from Honduras and his family, we're more upset that they're nervous that he may get deported. As I've said, folks, number one, they're not even supposed to be here. Number two, the ones they're going after are committing crimes against children, crimes against women, theft, fraud, murder. The city is going to install signage on properties that will fall under the executive order. Now, I think this is interesting, stating they may not be used for civil immigration enforcement. Boy, that's confusing. How much civil immigration enforcement is going on? It's criminal that they're involved in. So I wasn't at the briefing. I don't know what to make of this. The city's also going to provide signage to private landowners and leaseholders if they want to identify that law enforcement is unable, what they are to, that you can restrict civil immigration enforcement. Is there anyone that thinks the people that are what's going on in Minneapolis, does anyone think that they can tell the difference of what's going on? Those women that marched into Target and they were protesting inside of a Target because Target is allowing immigration authorities to use their restrooms. Is there another class of people? Those people are saying Target should discriminate and not allow federal immigration or federal agents to use their restroom facilities. What other group does this group of people, all these white women in the suburbs, what other group do they want to discriminate against? How about we don't believe Target should any longer allow any Jews to use the restroom. Would that be acceptable? We don't think Target any longer should allow blacks or Hispanics to use the restroom. Would that be acceptable? How about firefighters? Firefighters are no longer allowed. Nurses, doctors. So police, according to this crew, by the way, these people, if you saw the video, they were protesting inside of a Target. Smiley reaffirmed the city's meant to be safe and welcoming place for all. You know, this whole business that police are not supposed to assist them. I'm going to come back to that. What about IRS? What about the FBI? What about Homeland Security? You know, we saw all those federal agents that were all over the streets in Providence trying to assist to find the Brown shooter. Should they not have been allowed? Attorney General Pam Bondi sent a letter to 32 sanctuary jurisdictions. Rhode Island is one of them, deemed non-compliant with federal immigration laws. I'm just telling you, this is, yeah, it doesn't sound very inclusive. This is what all you're doing is they're creating a more difficult time for police. And you see these people putting out this narrative. This type of rhetoric just creates more danger. And I understand why the mayor's doing it. It's because people were upset. ICE agents had to, as I've talked about, ICE agents had to go inside of a courthouse to get the illegal that they want to get, the criminal that they were trying to get. And the reason that they had to go inside the courthouse was the fact that Rhode Island doesn't follow immigration statutes and they don't cooperate. So that's why the ICE agents, they had to chase them outside. So what the mayor's basically saying now is, so if ICE agents pull up into, that sounds like discrimination, into a city parking lot, they're not going to be allowed to do that anymore. What about ATF? What about the IRS? Can you imagine while the Brown shooter was on the loose, the Brown shooter's on the loose, FBI will no longer be allowed to, oh no, it was okay when they wanted their assistance in trying to get the shooter at Brown. But suddenly they don't want them. There's no part about this that is smart or makes sense. This business of, I'm tired of hearing about the fare. Like I've said, if you're a stowaway in a plane, I don't want to hear that the fact that if you sneak onto Amtrak, how about, right? Well, you get onto Amtrak, no one stops you from getting on the train. But then suddenly the conductors come down. Tickets, everybody have a tickets out. Tickets, please. Now, if you don't have a ticket and you don't have the money for the train, you're about to be found out. I'm tired of hearing, those conductors walking up and down. They're really creating a lot of fear among some of these Amtrak passengers. When I'm on Amtrak, which I try not to take because they're so unreliable, but when I do it. I mean, I do take it. I used to take it a lot when I lived in New York. I have a child that lives in New York now, so sometimes I'll take the train down and vice versa. But I don't want to hear, I don't get nervous and uncomfortable when they say, everybody have your ticket out, please. And they're going around and they're punching it and they put it up there. And I don't, not only I don't get nervous, I don't want to hear that someone is nervous. Because either you have a ticket or you don't. Now they get on the train. You can get on the train because they don't stop you as you're getting on. It's then once the train is rolling, then they come around. A little bit different at the airport. Folks, I want to remind you about protecting yourself. And one of the ways you can protect yourself, I want you to just keep this in mind, is my friend Mike Rizzo of Capital Fence. And you can call him for a free estimate, 401 618 4407, or online at capitalfenceri.com. Mike Rizzo, Fence and Gate, the most trusted for privacy and security, serving Rhode Island and Massachusetts. Fences around your home, around your property, around your business. Fences, what can they do? They're a first line of defense. They keep people out that don't belong there. Maybe you have neighbors that cut through your yard. Maybe you have kids that go through your yard. Maybe you have a pet. Maybe you have a child or a small child. Capital Fence. Call Mike Rizzo today. Set up that free consultation, free estimate, 401 618 4407. Serving Rhode Island and Massachusetts, repair and maintenance, highest quality, installation, licensed and insured, Capital Fence. 401 618 4407 for Capital Fence. Maybe you just want a little more privacy. Maybe you don't want a situation that every time you're in your yard, you have a gabby neighbor. And it should be no one, it's not offensive to do that. And I know I use the word fence, but you see people sometimes, criminals, they don't go into yards that have a fence. You have the right to protect yourself, your employees. Capital Fence, 401 618 4407. Look for them online, social media, but also online at capitalfenceri.com. Well, folks, as we have been talking about, and the investigations going on right now, you saw those anti-ICE protesters and how they crashed that church in Minneapolis. And it's so egregious. And I've also noticed some of the discussion is, well, what about this? And what about that? And that just tells you that they don't have any really anywhere to go. They don't have any defense of it. I mean, I've seen some of the coverage, and all they start doing is pivoting and saying, well, I think it's far more egregious, that woman lost her life as opposed to some protesters that went marching into a church. Now, as some people have pointed out, that's really not the point here. We would like to think you have the right that whatever your house of worship is, if you go to a, Episcopalian, if you go to a synagogue, if you go to a mosque, if you go to a Catholic church, whatever that may be, you would think you have the right to gather there and worship and pray and not have to worry. Number one, about your safety. You did have a shooting in a church. You had people killed inside the church, but it should be free from protesters storming into a church and behaving in that manner. And I think it'd be very refreshing if we finally maybe had an individual who would come out and say something like that. Now, I'm hearing a lot of, what about this? What about that? Well, blah, blah, blah. No, there's going to be ramifications, and there should be ramifications. And I think a lot of people are starting to get fed up that we don't have proper representation of people speaking out on quality of life issues, a lot of issues that to me are just like right and wrong. Now, joining us right now, he would like to represent the people in Congressional District 2. Right now, we have Seth Magaziner, who does not live in the district. But joining us right now, he's a Republican. He would like to go to Washington. He'd like to have a seat at the table. He would like to say Rhode Island is on board with the administration. And it is Vic Meller. And Vic, good afternoon. And I want to start off. A lot of people are excited about your campaign. A lot of people, like myself, feel it'd be great to have some representation in Washington on the inside. But I want to just start off and just get your thought on what is being talked about right now. And this is these protesters that invaded and crashed into that church in Minneapolis. Okay. Now we cannot hear Vic. I'm not sure why. Um, I don't know. It's not on our end. That's all right. These things can happen. It's not that. And so we're going to do I'm not sure why we can't hear him. So let's do this. We're going to I'm going to we're going to remove him and then we're going to ask him to re-sign back on, which can happen. And I'm not exactly sure why. Let me just listen, these things can be let me just communicate with them. Now as you guys know, I mean we do this quite frequently and we did not have a problem with Justin Katz yesterday and we even tried this out with them, but we'll give them another shot. Listen, there can be glitches. Where I'm not exactly sure what happened. We just did it yesterday. There was a nice buildup I gave. Um, let's see. And I think they're going to check things on their end. I'm not exactly sure what happened, but folks, I want to remind you that right now, yeah, I'll go I'll be first. I would like if someone would speak out on some of these things. And as I've mentioned, right now, Congressman Seth Magaziner, Congressman Gabe Amo, they basically, Senator Sheldon Whitehouse, they just act as attack dogs for the Democrat Party. They in no way, I would love if they would start to represent the people, but we just don't have that. So they seem to be too focused on just being attack dogs. So we'll get it straightened out and we'll get him on. So, but folks, that right now, and I want to use this opportunity. I think I think the time is now. I think I know. Do you hear when you listen to Sheldon Whitehouse, Senator Whitehouse speak, do you ever say 100%? I agree. Never. When you hear Gabe Amo, who refuses to even acknowledge and call the president President Trump, do you ever hear Congressman Amo? Okay, I believe we have Vic back. So, all right, Vic, I believe we should be good to go. You look fantastic.
Well, thank you, sir.
All right, there we go. All right, now Vic, that's all right. Listen, as I was saying, I'm just curious your thought, just off the cuff, and I realize it's not a voting issue, but for me it would be. But just your first thought in seeing these people, these protesters led by Don Lemon, crashing in and interrupting a church service.
Well, this is orchestrated, John. This is totally orchestrated. This is a blatant intimidation on people of faith. These are secular people that are trying to, in my estimation, in my opinion, this is a part of their movement is to try to break up our faith and then the people of faith.
This is the 1-year anniversary of President Trump taking office, Vic, inaugurated 1 year ago. It's hard to believe. I think, like me, I had high expectations. I just didn't realize he was going to exceed them in the first year. And right now, you want to talk about someone delivering and cranking on all cylinders.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. But it's never enough, is it? With half of the MAGA movement, it's just never enough. He is absolutely tearing it apart across the whole globe. He is shifting the world order right now. He's making Europe fix themselves when they don't want to by pulling our, threatening to pull our resources away and then using tariffs as a leveraging tool. It's absolutely amazing to see what he's doing, especially when he's not getting a whole lot of help out of the House or the Senate.
That's right. Now, Vic, it would be tremendous, I'll admit, and it's attainable. If Rhode Island had a Republican in the room somewhere, someone who could go to the White House and say to the president, I'm on board, right? We're going to make what you want. We're going to make it happen. It would also be refreshing to have someone, as you know, it's been publicized that the state may start to lose federal funding because of these sanctuary policies. So out of the box, are you comfortable, Vic Miller, congressional candidate CD2, are you comfortable with Rhode Island operating with sanctuary policies?
No, absolutely not. How about we just follow federal law, and this wouldn't be a problem. So there's a reason that they have sanctuary cities, is because they need the illegals here, the criminal illegals especially, to fortify their whole voter base, right? And to help manipulate the scams they have going on. It behooves me as to why you would not share your data with the federal government. And they come out and say they don't want to share personal data with the federal. The federal government has it all already. They just don't know who's in these programs. It's so blatantly obvious what they're doing. They're hiding corruption that they know is going on. And to your point of me being a representative, a Republican representative with direct ties right to the White House, yes, I am that, and I do have those direct ties. The White House is not going to work with Rhode Island right now because all four of the federal delegate, they all have Trump derangement syndrome, and at every opportunity, all they do is rip at him, despite the good that he's doing for our country.
Folks, again, we're speaking with Vic Miller. Now, Vic is a Republican. He would like to represent Rhode Island in Congress, Congressional District 2. That is a seat right now held by Seth Magaziner. Now, Vic, your campaign since you announced, I mean, the enthusiasm is out there. I saw some people over the weekend. People are buzzing about it. Are you getting the sense on the ground that people are finally ready to have some representation in Washington?
Oh, yeah. Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Absolutely. 100%. I'm coming in with my MAGA. I'm MAGA. I'm Maha. When I first got here, starting my campaign tour, they're like, "Hey, Vic, you need to tone it down. Republicans don't really vote in Rhode Island. You're going to have to appeal to moderates." And my answer to that is the reason a lot of Republicans don't vote is because there's not a candidate that appeals to them. And I'm going to be that candidate that has those connections right to the White House, right to Trump. And, we're going to make this happen, because everywhere I go, nobody is happy. Nobody is happy with what's going on in this state.
That is exactly right. And finally, to have some representation. And you know what else that we're seeing? And I think I'd be curious to hear your thoughts. The way we are seeing in Minneapolis, these federal agents, the way they're being treated, the disrespect, the way the amount of fraud out there. Vic, that is such an insult to all law enforcement really around the country.
Oh, it's not just an insult. It's dangerous. It's dangerous to our law enforcement, to where our local politicians are saying, this young lady was murdered. She was not murdered she tried to run him over, and he sustained internal bleeding by how hard she hit him.
Yep.
And it was a just shooting, okay?
Yes.
So this needs to stop. This whole thing needs to stop. Why are they protecting the fraud in Minnesota? So, I can't, man, it's hard for me to even say why, how, that they're willing to go to these lengths to protect this. We all know the answer.
Now, I do want to put you on the spot. If you were in Congress serving Rhode Island and you uncovered that somehow there was some kind of a scam with federal money, or maybe was tied to the offshore wind farms that Sheldon Whitehouse is involved in and so forth, if you were in Congress, would you blow the whistle on that, or would you be more inclined to just go along with it?
Well, that's an easy one. You're not putting me on the spot. Okay. So, I am a friendly all the way to the White House. And I will be bringing a lot of money into the state of Rhode Island, but I will have a caveat of a Doge connection. We are going to start auditing every dollar that comes into the state. And if there's any kind of fraud, we will absolutely investigate it.
Because right now there's definitely a feeling that, and let's face it, that no one is really watching the other side, and the state really, just from a general sense, the state would has operated the most effectively when you have someone on the inside. Now, Vic, before I let you go, I want people to know that you are very friendly with someone that I know and respect tremendously, and that is General Flynn. And from what I understand, you're actually involved with a project with him right now.
Yes, sir. Well, I met General Flynn 3.5 years ago. He took me under his wing. He mentored me from that time period. I traveled everywhere with him for years. After the election was won, he's doing his thing in DC right now. And I took on this endeavor. But I have him coming in. We are starting a series of rallies on November 7th. We're going to start at the Crown Royal, and General Flynn's going to be the keynote speaker. We're going to bring in national artists to sing. We're going to be bringing in Maha speakers. We're just going to start a whole series of rallies that's just going to push the whole 26th season right up to the election.
All right. Well, we'll certainly be talking to you before then. What's the best way for people to learn more about you and get a sense of exactly what you stand for?
All right. VicMellor.com. VicMellor.com. It's all right there. Yes, sir.
Okay.
Thank you.
Folks, he's a Republican. He's running for Congress. Vic, nice job, and we will talk to you again.
Thank you, sir. It was a pleasure.
All right, folks, there he is. Now, again, admittedly, I'll admit I would certainly like someone in Congress that at least will listen to this side, because as many of you know, we have just gone so long now without any type of representation. Think how refreshing it would be if we had someone who right now is on the inside with Speaker Johnson. And as I have talked about, I mean, Seth Magaziner, he doesn't even, Congressman Magaziner, he's broken the first promise that he said he would do, which was he said he would move into the district, and he's not moving into the district. So he hasn't moved into the district. He's not going to move into the district. He doesn't represent, to me, effectively the people of CD2. I don't think Gabe Amo does either, but Vic Mellor, he is running for Congress, Republican. Can you imagine? Picture a state. Imagine us having someone in Washington sitting down with Speaker Johnson, meeting with President Trump at the White House, saying, here's what I think we could do to execute and involve Rhode Island in this project. I mean, that would be a game changer, folks. That would be a game changer. This portion of our program, I want to remind you that Watson Materials, for all of your outside, make your outside the best possible. Watson Materials, 401-885-0600. Watson Materials, the largest selection of landscape materials in Rhode Island, is Watson Materials. Call Sean, request a quote, 401-885-0600. Landscape lighting, pavers, retaining walls, natural stone, cobblestone. The most complete selection of landscape materials in Rhode Island is Watson Materials. Call them 401-885-0600. You know, I also want to mention that it would be refreshing. Can you imagine? Let's look at what's going on. You have Senator Sheldon Whitehouse. Let's just stay with that for a moment. Pushing so much for these offshore wind farms, the most expensive form of energy. Now, from what we understand, there is a lot of fraud tied up in that project, but it's impossible to get access to so many of these documents. And then, the wife, Sandra Whitehouse, this has been reported. She's a consultant to one of these companies. So Senator Whitehouse gets these federal grants, and then boom, they're siphoned right through to this company, and then they pay off the wife. And remember, the thing about, if in fact you're a consultant, it's not that you have to go into the office every day. It doesn't mean that you're an employee of that company. It just means you consult. And as it's also been reported, the White House's prominent members of Bailey's Beach Club, and you don't want to, if you're her or them, you don't want a job where then you can't be at the beach club. So if you're a consultant, you make your own hours. Maybe you sit in a beach chair and you type out a couple of emails and say, okay, I'm done for the week, and then just bill them, let alone then you have a retainer as a consultant. So, but I'll say, I think when people want to talk about fraud, let's talk about those offshore wind farms that, that there's so much money that's been thrown into it, and gouging that Revolution Wind and some of these others, and making the demands that they have to have organized labor, but just the millions that have passed through. Where am I going with this? I think it'd be tremendous if we had a representative in Washington who said, I'm going to get to the bottom of this whole offshore wind scam, because it is a scam. I mean, I understand the nature of people that say, wouldn't it be great if you just had a windmill and it's outside and it's blowing around, and then it can create enough electricity? I mean, in theory, that sounds great, but in reality, it's the most expensive form of energy. And the only way that they even operate is through grants and government subsidies, thus making it the highest, most expensive form of energy. And on top of that, those wind farms need oil. So I like the whole idea of that. Yeah, that would be great. Much like these people, I do know people, as I mentioned, that have solar panels, and they have the room. I know of an individual who lives in the southern part of the state, and he has like 2 acres or 3 acres of property, and he installed all these solar panels on what was just empty property. And according to him, he doesn't even have to pay his electricity bill. There's enough of it. But how many people live on 3 acres of property that they can have those solar panels? So um, we need we need the least expensive form of energy in order to compete. We do. And you can't do that effectively with that. So I want to again come back on and touch on what's going on in Providence, because Providence is caving to mob rules. Providence, um, Providence, if they continue down this path, they're going to get on the radar. The city of Providence, by Mayor Smiley introducing these things, they're going to get on the radar, and then you're really going to see ICE and the brigades come in. I also, I don't think this will be reported, but these types of actions, and this happened today, Mayor Smiley issues anti-ICE executive order. And I'll admit, this just came out, so I want some time to go through it. But it certainly doesn't, it's not rational. If he's saying, I would almost feel better if they said, we're really not going to enforce this, but we just want to put this out just to quiet, the mobs that are out there, the people that are marching around, and we just don't want that. We want to, silence that crowd. So we're not really going to go around and enforce it. But it's a problem when when this person is deciding your policies, when this person is dictating how law enforcement operates, you have a problem, because these people, they're professional protesters. I also have mentioned that all this anti-ICE stuff they're talking about, there is an effect on law enforcement, because then the people don't stop there. The people that are against federal agents doing their job, following the law, implementing the law. Remember, no new laws have been created. But when you have this deportation defense network, the woman that was shot and killed in Minneapolis, she would be a member of something like that. And they teach them and use a lot of the same tactics. And as I have said in the past and others have said, what happened in Minneapolis, if they let the Minneapolis police cooperate with ICE, the street would have been blocked off. They could have gone and gotten who they were looking for, who is a child rapist, and you wouldn't have had all that problem and everything that then happened. But the problems start when you don't let police in. But I think where Mayor Smiley has to be cautious is these people don't want any police. They don't want any police. Keep in mind, they were cheering on Hamas. Mayor Smiley may say he needs to do this in order to kind of quiet the mob that's building with what happened outside of the courthouse. But to me, you're feeding the beast in a way. What's really happening. You think that you're going to quiet everything down, and then it actually, to me, becomes the opposite because this crowd becomes emboldened. And this crowd says, we want to get more aggressive. They may say that they're going to go after ICE. It's really, listen, they don't want any police. They don't want any of it. So it may start that they're saying that with ICE, but they're not going to stop. And it is ridiculous why they're going to single them out, as I've mentioned. And, Mayor Smiley, at those Brown University press conferences that I attended after the shooting, you had ATF there. You had FBI there. They're federal agents. As I was riding around those neighborhoods during the manhunt, those were federal agents going door to door. So you're going to say, what, they can't cooperate? Like, who's making the rules here? Total insanity. I completely, fundamentally disagree. And the reason I disagree is you don't let people like this create your policy. You don't. And these people are operating illegally. 100%. ICE agents forced to chase the illegal outside the courthouse because they won't let them go in. Does that make sense to anybody? Listen, when you start to treat police that manner, this crowd, they don't stop. You've seen, as we've talked about, how they were, they pulled that guy over and they said, show us your trunk. When you have someone like Don Lemon setting your public safety policy, you got big problems. And I can't wait till this clown is arrested. And not because I have been on or was on with Don Lemon on CNN several times. And, very condescending. I'm so glad that Don Lemon went to that church and he should be arrested. That's not, by the way, that's not journalism. And anyone that is really paying attention, those people that went crashing into that church, as other people have said, if they want to be on the sidewalk, they aren't able to do that. They want to be in the street. They want to be in a parking lot. But for the individuals that are cheering on what they did, and there are people cheering them on, what if they went into a mosque? What if they went into a temple? Why would that be allowed? Don Lemon, I'm not an activist. Yeah, keep telling yourself that. Folks, this portion of our program, and it's brought to you by Kids Club on the Pike. Now listen, if you are a parent or grandparent and you have some concerns or in need of daycare, call them. They have several locations. They also have before and after school care, preschool, half and full day programs for preschool children ages 3 through 5. They can provide transportation before and after care for school age children ages 5 through 12. Kids Club on the Pike. Now that's just one location they have. They also have several in Warwick. Call them at 401-443-5336. Kids Club on the Pike. Now, they're located right on the Johnston line at 295, right off of 295 on Plainfield Pike. But again, if you're thinking and looking for some options for daycare, Kids Club on the Pike, and they have before and after school care, they do preschool. Call Kristen and they'll plug you into one of their locations, 401-443-5336. I think it's going to be very difficult for Mayor Smiley. I get that the mayor of Providence, and it could be polling. It could be that they feel, or he feels, I should say, that they need to do something. But introducing anti-ICE executive orders is not the way to go, because the crowd that is cheering that on is anti-police. I think when you also do that, you're allowing people to conflate what really happened. And I agree with Vic. I mean, like everyone else, folks, it is horrifying what happened. But you also have to recognize when those individuals, when that woman put herself in harm's way. She wasn't, as I've already gone through and explained, it's not that she was pulled over and was reaching for a wallet. You've heard stories in the past. Police are called. Someone says someone broke into my apartment. Or sometimes someone says, I heard someone upstairs. And then, it's a child that lives in the building and it was a toy gun. Or you had a situation where someone's going to get their wallet or the phone, and then they're accidentally shot. That's not what happened in Minneapolis. She shouldn't have been on that street. They should not have been behaving in that manner. And what I don't like is, and I don't know who attended this announcement by Mayor Smiley, the mayor of Providence, but when you have these people cheering on what you're doing and they're being emboldened and they feel that they're on the right path and they feel very righteous, you can't have a conversation with them. And the amount of misinformation that they put out there, that their ICE is kidnapping people and they're separating families and they're creating fear and they're going into schools and they're arresting children, and they just keep saying it over and over, and they're brainwashing a lot of these people. That's not what's happening. That's not what's happening. But don't forget what happened at that courthouse, which seemed to spark Mayor Smiley putting this forward. If Rhode Island did it the way they're supposed to, there should have been a transfer of the prisoner inside the courthouse. But because of McKee policies, and now apparently City of Providence policies, you're going to create more danger and trouble outside, not less. All right, cold weather ahead. If you listen to the radio, stay tuned for the 2 o'clock news. Everyone else, we'll be back.